We're going to get started here in just a couple minutes. I'm going to give our friends some time to join the live session. Time of recording is 3:57. So we're going to wait just a couple minutes, probably start right around 4. I hope your Friday is well, your week went well. Take a second to reflect on how this week went for you. Maybe try to be conscious of our good decisions and our not so good decisions, and how we can either replicate them if they were good and avoid them if they were not so good. Take a second to just think on that. Maybe we can begin to focus our breathing, take conscious thought of that for just a second. Start making our breathing meaningful and purposeful and full of life. Alrighty, so it is now 4 at time of recording. So we are going to go ahead and get started. If we are in a seated position, we are going to make our way standing in our mountain to start our breathing today. Position ourselves just like me here. Our feet about hip distance apart. Our shoulders nice and relaxed. Our eyes may drift close. And we begin to breathe deeply using the stomach. Our exhales come out through the mouth. They are forceful. We focus our attention on our breathing. We let everything else drift away. Taking a couple more of these breaths here, finding our peace, our balance, our conscious awareness. As we move through this practice, it's going to be similar to last week's. At this time, our main focus is still progressing towards a strong wheel pose. And so I think probably this week and maybe one class next week will be focused on strengthening our wheel pose and opening up our hips and reducing some stress on our spine. To start though, we will be doing some sun salutations, so if these are familiar to us, we're more than welcome to get started with them. If we want a smidge of a refresher, we'll do the first one slow, and then second and third a smidge faster each time. So as we flow through our sun salutations, we want to make sure we maintain this breath we've spent some time trying to establish, and not letting our breath become passive again. We want to keep the flow, maintain the activity in the manual process of breathing instead of letting it become automatic. So from our mountain, we make sure we're standing nice and tall, nice and relaxed. We inhale, arms go up towards the ceiling. We exhale, we swan dive our forward fold, reaching down towards the earth here, down towards the ground. We dangle here for just a second, maintaining our breath. Our next inhale, we lift halfway, coming into our monkey. And we exhale, we fold, we walk our hands or feet out and come into our first downward facing dog. In our downward facing dog, our body should be shaped roughly like a triangle. Our head pressed in between our biceps. Our hips up nice and high towards the sky here. We hold this for just a second. And we inhale into our plank. We can maintain a high plank here, or we can drop into a low plank. It is personal preference. From our plank, we'll rotate our elbows inward just a little bit and take our chaturanga, come all the way down. Inhale to lift up. We press into our upward facing dog, and we pull our shoulders away from our ears. Maintaining that yoga breath. Next, exhale, we open our knees, press our hips back. Slip into that child's pose. Knowing that we can leave our arms out extended in front of us just like so. Or if that movement is not in our range today, we can bring our hands together and place them just behind our neck here. Allowing ourselves to be aware of our body and how we're feeling. Hold this for just a second, focusing our breathing. Next inhale, we lift up into our tabletop position. Our backs are nice and flat. Our abs are engaged, not sagging out here. Wrists in line with our shoulders, knees with our hips. Tuck our toes under our hips. Lift. We come back in that downward facing dog. We can adjust as necessary. I myself have some longer arms, and I have to give myself a little bit more room when transitioning from tabletop to downward facing dog. From here, our next inhale will bring our feet towards our hands here, or our hands towards our feet, back into that forward fold. We inhale to lift halfway, straightening our spine here. We exhale to fold, sit in the heels a smidge. Inhale, reverse swan dive. And as we exhale, our hands come in towards our center, and we press down into our chair, holding, sitting deeply, straightening our spine, putting the weight in our heels. I fell, oopsie. If we fall, that's a-okay. We just want to make sure we hop right back into it. And then inhale, press up, and release. Reminding all of us that sometimes some poses are just a little bit more difficult than they were the previous week, or maybe than they will be the week after that. And knowing that if we slip up, that's okay. We just want to hop right back into it when we're feeling good enough. It's all a process take a second to breathe here and maybe start to notice some tense or tight muscles in our body, maybe from that first flow. We're going to go a smidge faster, a little more breath-centric. We can stay with me, or we can flow with the pace of our own breath. From that mountain, we find our breath. Inhale, arms go up towards the ceiling. Exhale, we fold down towards the ground here. Inhale to lift halfway. Exhale to fold back down, watching those hands or hips or feet out. Coming into that downward facing dog. We inhale, shift that plank forward. Exhale, come down all the way, chaturanga, into our upward facing dog. Remembering when we're in upward facing dog coming from chaturanga, we want to relieve the tension in our toes. The tops of our feet are now in the earth here. Next exhale, we open our knees, press our hips back, slip into that child's pose. Maintaining that breathing, knowing we have variations of child's pose we can do here. We shift up, lifting into our tabletop position, adjusting as needed, holding the abs together. Toes tuck under, hips lift. We're back in that downward facing dog. We exhale, walk our hands and feet together. Forward fold. Inhale to our monkey. Exhale to fold, sit in the heels a smidge. Inhale, come all the way back up. Hands come together, then to our center. We sit down into our chair and hold. Finding our balance. 2 more breaths. Next inhale, we launch all the way up and release. Find our peace. Shake out those wrists and ankles. Maybe becoming a smidge more aware of how our body is feeling today. This next one's going to be similar, maybe a smidge faster, a little bit more breath-centric. However, if we're feeling very comfortable, we're more than welcome to move ahead at our own pace, listen to our body's needs and wants, and take the freedom of doing it ourselves if that's something that we're feeling like is in our practice today. If we're just joining us, we're going to start back in our mountain here, feet hip distance apart, shoulders relaxed. Inhale, arms go up towards the ceiling. Exhale, swan dive to forward fold. Dangling here, legs are near straight. We inhale, lift halfway, we come into our monkey. We exhale to fold. We sit in the heels a little bit. We walk our hands and feet out. We come into that downward facing dog. We inhale, come to our plank, engage our abs here. Tuck our elbows in, we chaturanga, come down, inhale into our upward facing dog. On our next exhale, we open our knees, press our hips back, slip into that child's pose. Take another breath or two here. Inhale, we lift up into that tabletop position, nice and easy. Next inhale, we tuck our toes under and lift. For our downward facing dog. Exhale, we walk our hands towards our feet. Inhale, our monkey. Exhale, our fold. Sit in the heels a smidge. Inhale, reverse swan dive. We're prepping for that last chair. Hands come together, then towards our center, and we sit into ourselves here. Maybe sitting a little taller than we did before. Really engaging our quads, the muscles on top of our thighs here. Next inhale, we launch up. And release. Hopefully we're a little bit warm at this point. We're aware of what our body's feeling and understanding and knowing our limitations for the day. Knowing that limitations don't necessarily mean we can't or we shouldn't do this activity. It merely means we have to listen to our body if we want to keep moving. Be aware of how we're feeling. If we have some water by our side, we're more than welcome to take this time. Grab a sip of water before we move into our bulk flow of the practice. Make sure we're maintaining that breath. Now, if we were here last week, this bulk flow is going to be largely similar. I've added just a couple of modifications to up it a little bit. However, our main goal is still progressing towards wheel, and I think this class has done a pretty good job at making wheel a smidge easier. So from our mountain, I'm going to turn sideways here. From our mountain, we're going to take our left leg, stick that out in front of us, and we're going to place ourselves in a warrior one. We can take long warrior one here, or we can take short warrior one. Our main goal is that our hips are in line with our forward foot. Our body is in one plane of motion. We're not rotated out here. We're same direction as the rest of our body. Our arms shoot up, and our weight is evenly distributed between both of our legs. We're going to hold this for just a second. Next exhale, we open into our warrior two. Our back leg rotates, so the knife edge of our foot on our right leg lines up with the heel on our front leg. Again, one plane of motion. We got a nice deep bend in this front left leg here, looking like about 90 degrees. That's about the sweet spot we want to be at. From here, we're going to take a reverse warrior. So our front left hand is going to rotate palm face up. And we're going to hinge down the back of that right leg to open up the inside of our left. Our intercostals, our abs, our shoulders, all engaged here. We hold this for just a second. Exhale, we return back to our warrior two. We release our knee and open ourselves wide into five-pointed star. So now both my feet, my toes, are pointed out roughly at this angle, opening nice and wide. My legs are near straight, maybe a soft bend in each. And I'm going to hinge forward. We can all hinge forward, letting my arms just kind of dangle here, opening up my hip abductors, the muscles on the inside here. If we have the mobility in our practice today to reach ourselves further, we can imagine trying to bring our head towards the ground, using our fingers as stability here. Next, exhale. We're going to lean out towards that left side. So our weight comes off that right leg. I'm going to adjust here once we get into it. And we're on the top of our left foot here. Our right leg is heel up, toes facing the ceiling. Hands come off the ground for balance. And we start to take that right arm and trace our right leg. We find our balance here and breathe. We hold this for another couple of seconds. Next, exhale, we're going to use our hands for stability and movement. And stay low, keep our center of mass low. and perform the same motion on the other side. Again, I'm going to adjust a smidge. Once we have our balance, the same idea applies. We trace that front left leg, really feeling some tension along our hamstring and our hip abductors here. Making sure the tension is not too strenuous, being conscious of how our body is feeling and monitoring these movements. Still breathing. Next exhale, we place our hands down, we come back into our center. We readjust to that 5-pointed star and we lift up. We open back here into our warrior one, taking a slight rotation. Much like before, arms go up, we find that stability. And from here we'll walk ourselves into pyramid or triangle. So we can bounce that front right leg in or bring our left leg back. Our legs are like a triangle here. Soft little distance. I'm going to walk my front leg out just a smidge more, and I'm going to keep my lower body from moving. I'm going to hold my lower body still as I hinge out over that front left leg. Again, hips are in line. We come down as far as feels comfortable, maybe a little bit of stress here. And we trace that front left leg. We can stay somewhere along the calf, anywhere along the way. We can come down to our ankle. We can frame the foot with our hands on the earth. Either way, no matter what we do, it's all fine as long as we're feeling this movement in our hamstrings. Still breathing. If our right leg is rotated out like mine is, we're going to unrotate it, shoot it back a bit. We're in a low lunge now. If our hand was on our calf, we're going to use them to frame our front left foot. We're going to drop that right knee, release our toes back here for the low lunge. And we're going to shoot our arms up nice and high and then lean into this lunge just a little further. Feeling it again in our right quad near our hips. Feeling it in our left hips near the top, maybe towards our abductors and our glutes on the outside of the left leg. Next exhale, we come back down to frame that left foot. Our toes tuck under, our knee lifts. We put some weight in our front hands here and allow us to shoot that left leg back. And we come into a downward facing dog. Now this one's a smidge different. We're going to take our heels and allow ourselves to pedal them down one heel at a time to release some tension that we might have building up in our calves. Adjusting our downward facing dog if necessary. If we notice downward facing dogs a little bit tense on our wrists, we want to make sure we spread our 5 fingers out nice and wide and press into each fingertip as if we're gripping a basketball to allow us to distribute some of that tension. Now I'm going to rotate here. We're going to shift from that downward facing dog into our plank, shifting forward. And as we drop down, we are not going to go into our upward facing dog. We're going to place our hands flat down so our forearms are all the way in the earth. We're going to release our toes and press up into Sphinx. It's a little bit different, very similar. Our goal this time is to just curve our upper 50%. Breathe calmly and stably. holding, and release down. From here, we'll open our hips, use our forearms to press us into a child's pose, a much needed and well-deserved child's pose. Whenever we're ready, we'll shift up into that tabletop. Far more important, we really have it stable this time. We're going to flexate through some cat-cows here. So our wrists are in line with our shoulders, our knees with our hips, nice and sturdy, abs engaged. We inhale into our cow, arcing our back here, gazing towards the ceiling. And we exhale into our cat. Our pelvis tucks in, our chin goes towards our chest. Inhale back into our cow. As we move through this movement, just like any other movement, we want to keep in mind how we think we're doing. Are we activating what we think we need to be activating? Are we engaging with our body and thinking about our movements actively? Being aware of the way our body is contorting. Taking one more of each cat and cow. And returning to a nice stable tabletop. Now here we're going to thread the needle to relieve a little tension in the shoulders. I know this is primarily hip and back focused. However, for wheel, our shoulders need to be relaxed too. So if we think about our tabletop here, we'll start with the left side. Left hand tucks in between the gap of our right hand and knee. And we start to drive that left hand as far right as possible, bringing our shoulder towards the ground. We feel some relief and some lengthening and opening in our back near our traps, near our shoulder blade where those two connect. Slowly pressing out of our needle, replacing our hand in our tabletop and taking our right arm and doing the same thing. Dragging it through the gap, reaching as far left as possible, and then dropping our shoulder and our head down, replicating this movement on the left side. Still breathing. Next inhale, we lift back up into our tabletop. Our toes tuck under for our downward facing dog. And we're going to lift in a three-legged dog here. So our left leg is going to come up nice and high. Lift it as high as we possibly can. We'll rotate our hips open for our three-legged dog. We feel this all along our left side from our stomach all the way up our backs, maybe into our shoulders as well. We'll unrotate, keep that knee nice and tight and tucked in. We'll hold it into our body here and plant it for a low lunge. From here, we'll bounce that right leg up to meet the left in a forward fold. We'll inhale into our monkey. Exhale, fold back down, sit in the heels. Inhale, reverse swan dive. And release. Taking a second to find our breath, to grab some water. Find our focus, our peace, and assess how our body is doing today. We got to repeat that on the right side before we do some floor movements. Taking just a second to adjust and align ourselves. All right. Making the other side nice and limber as well. We find our mountain. We find our peace. Deep inhales and exhales. This time our right leg's going to come forward into our warrior one, knowing that we can keep that short warrior one, much like so, or we can open up nice and long into our warrior one, knowing whichever one we do, we want to mimic what we did on the first side. So if we did long on our left side, we want to do long on our right side. Holding this for one more breath. Next exhale, we shift into our warrior two. Left leg, the knife edge aligns with our front heel on our right leg. Arms reach out towards opposite sides of the room. And we got that deep 90-ish degree bend here in our front right leg. We'll rotate that right palm face up this time and hinge down our left leg for our reverse warrior. Knowing that in reverse warrior we can remove our back arm here and maintain our stability. The left hand in this pose is just for support, for balance, not for strength. Slowly releasing back into that warrior two. We'll adjust to come into that five-pointed star, remembering our toes are pointed out nice and wide here. We inhale and exhale down towards the ground, reaching our head towards the earth, adjusting our stance a little bit as necessary. We go out towards our right leg this time, so we maintain that low center of gravity. We work our way over to our right, adjusting as needed. We come out on the ball of our right foot. Take that left hand out towards our ankles here on our left leg. Right hand might go on top of the thigh. We balance and focus. Maybe keeping a soft bend in that left leg to make sure our tendons don't get too tight. Holding. As we exhale, we'll slowly shift. Keep that center of mass low. Same idea. Left hand on top of the thigh. We can't see, but it's right here. Right hand out towards that ankle. And we're on top of the ball of the left foot now. Still breathing. Next exhale, we return towards our center, adjusting as needed. We're back in that wide straddled five-pointed star. From here, we'll lift and press up and open into our warrior one, adjusting as needed. We got that deeper bend in that front left leg. Our hips are facing the forward direction. If we're in long, our heel is off the ground in our back leg. I'm realizing my legs are wrong now. Oopsie poopsie. Right leg is forward, left leg's back. Arms go up. Same idea applies. We hold and release. Bringing our feet a smidge closer together. Finding ourselves preparing for that triangle here. Soft baby bend in that front right leg. Lower body doesn't move. We hinge down and forward along our body, reaching down towards the floor. Maybe coming all the way down, maybe stopping at the ankle. Maybe coming somewhere up the calf. Whatever feels best for us today in this practice. Still breathing. On that next exhale, we'll wiggle that left leg back a little bit further, coming into that low lunge. Making sure we place our hands on the ground to provide some support for that front right leg. Our left knee drops. Release the toes. And lift up nice and high. And we sit into that lunge, pressing our pelvis down towards the floor. Holding for 3, 2, 1. Reframe that front right leg. Toes tuck back under, knee lifts. And we shoot that right leg back, coming into that forward, that downward facing dog. Or just smidge difficult today. Now from our downward facing dog, we're going to shift our weight forward, come into our plank. I'm going to adjust again. And we'll chaturanga down all the way to the earth. Forearms come down. And we lift into our Sphinx, pressing our upper body up, trying to lift only our upper body off the ground. Still breathing. Next exhale, we release down, open our knees. Use our forearms and press ourselves back, coming into that child's pose. Reflecting a little bit on this practice and how we're feeling so far. Making sure we're still feeling good. Next inhale, we lift into our tabletop here. Same as before, we'll go through a couple of cat-cows and then into our needle threading. Taking the liberty to do as many cat-cows as feels good for us today. Maybe taking one more of each. And then returning to our center. And we'll thread the needle this time. Right arm first, goes through the left side. Pressing all the way down.
feeling that lengthening in our left lat and the opening between our right shoulder blade and our traps here. Inhale to lift out. Rotate sides. Left arm goes through the right gap. Hopefully reaching a smidge further, or at least aiming to, than we did the first time. Slowly lifting out here, planting our hands back in that tabletop. Our toes tuck under, hips lift. We're back in that downward facing dog. Likely our last one. Our right leg lifts for our three-legged dog, lifting up nice and high and rotating to open those hips. We shift our weight and pull, tuck it through, hug it tight towards our body, and plant for that low lunge. We bounce that left leg up to meet the right. We're back in our forward fold. We lift into our monkey, our half lift here. Exhale, we fold back down, sit in the heels a smidge. Inhale. Reverse, swan dive, and release. That's our bulk flow. We're going to transition ourselves down in just a second. After, of course, we take a little bit of water and prepare for our wheel and finish with our closing. A little meditation is going to feel really good on a dreary day like today. Alrighty. We're going to do a couple of short neck movements here. Make sure we keep the top of our spine aligned. The back part of the neck is still, in fact, our spine. It doesn't stop at our shoulders. And we got to hit all of it. So, we find our mountain. We find our peace. And we start. I'm going to rotate to make it a little bit easier to see. We're standing in mountain here. And what we're going to do is we're going to press our head back as if we're leaning into a pillow. Right? And then we're going to tuck our chin in towards our neck. It's going to give us a nasty double chin, and that's okay. Release the chin and relax. We're going to do this 2 more times. We're going to do this two more times. Press the head all the way back. Tuck the chin in towards our chest, into our neck here. And release. One more. We press it back. Tuck the chin into our neck here. Keeping that head pressed back as far as we can. And releasing and out. Now what we're doing here is there's a short part of our spine that goes right up into our neck that we tend to let lean forward when we sit on our phones or mess around on our computer too long. And if we are a victim of that, we might have noticed some serious tension when we dug our chin in towards our neck there. Just something to keep in mind. It's super helpful for our movements. Just checking chat for a second. All right, so we're back in our mountain. We maintain that mountain. We're going to do a little bit more spinal bend. One more spinal bend and a couple lengthening movements. When that mountain arms go up, our left wrist is going to grab our right wrist. There's no way I can get that in the field of view. And we're going to hinge out towards our left. We're going to pull that right arm out towards our left side. Our hips are going to press out towards our right. And we hold. We maintain that single plane of motion. We don't let our shoulder pull forward. We maintain our single movement here. We release, we come back, we switch arms. Right hand grabs the left wrist now. We pull that left arm. Hips go out towards the left this time. Single plane of motion, keep that in mind. And we release. A quick little easy spinal bend, nothing too serious. We're going to take our fingers, make them into fists, press them into the small of our back, just above our glutes, maybe right above our waistline. From our mountain, we're going to start to press into our lower spine and start to rotate backwards. Keeping our abs engaged as well. Making sure we're not overdoing it. Trusting our body and knowing how we feel and what feels good and what's too much. Slowly releasing back into our center. Hopefully that feels a little good after we come out of it, of course. Now let's transition ourselves down to the floor. Do a quick pigeon, open into our wheel, and end our practice today. We got to get down there. We're going to bring our hands towards our center. Take a Mulavasana squat. We come all the way down. We use our elbows or our triceps to push our thighs apart here. Our backs and spines are very straight. Single plane of motion. Stable, easy breathing. We release our grip. Hands come out behind us. We make our way down onto our glutes and into our staff position. Legs nice and long here, nice and tall, very straight, and we use our abs to bring us down onto the ground, using our strength to pull ourselves very slowly, engaging our body. And once we've made our way down onto the ground here, we're going to hug our legs in towards our body, pulling in nice and tightly, pulling our tailbone just off the ground here. The harder we pull, the deeper that stretches in our glutes. Knowing that if we have the ability to pull our knees all the way into our chest, we're going to get a little bit of a deeper stretch. Now from here, we're going to place our left leg down in this triangle-like position, pyramid shape. Our right leg is going to cross just above the knee so we can see our knee from our lying down position here. We're going to take our fingers, interlock them, of course, behind the leg pit here. Lift that left leg, and again start to pull in towards our chest. Knowing if we want to make this a little bit more difficult, we can try to keep our shoulder blades glued to the ground. For our supine pigeon. In a hip-based class, a pigeon is an absolute staple. In my opinion, there is not a better hip opener to really assess how your glutes, your hamstrings, and your hips mobility is at any given time. We hold until our next exhale and release. We change sides so our right leg goes to that pyramid shape. Our left leg comes to cross it. Again, same idea. We can see the knee just barely above. Take our hands. One goes through the gap made by our legs. One goes on the outside. Interlock behind the leg pit there. And again, we pull that left leg in, knowing that one leg might be a smidge tighter than the other. That's the case for me. My left has a little bit less mobility than my right. So I gotta work just a smidge harder to pull it in, and that is a-okay. Holding. And release. Right leg goes down. Left leg goes down right next to it. We got both our legs in that pyramid shape. Now, much like we've done in the past couple practices, we're going to go into our wheel knowing we have options. We have 1, 2, 3 options. We're going to go through them one more time, just kind of keep them on the fresh of our mind as they serve a smidge of a different benefit sometime. So we're in that pyramid, maybe adjusting just a little bit so we can barely reach our ankles. Maybe with our middle finger we can touch our heel. And we're going to lift using the weight in our heels to press up, pushing our pelvis towards the sky, straightening our body in a decline position, almost like we're a ramp. We shouldn't feel too much weight in our core or our spine, as most of the weight is pressing through our heels here. We slowly lower down. We go to the up version so we don't move. We press up one more time. We interlock the fingers in the gap beneath our glutes. We wiggle our shoulders into the earth here. We press up a little bit higher. We're real close to that wheel prep. You can see our fingers interlocked just below the glutes. And we uninterlock the fingers. We let our shoulders come out. We slowly release down. Knowing we can take either variation. Wheel does not have to be something we do today. I just offered in case people are trying to really expand and go the extra mile today, really challenge themselves. So for this next movement we can do either what we did before or a quick little refresher on wheel. What's going to happen, we're going to take our hands, we're going to place them so fingers come in towards the shoulders, the heels of our hands are pressing out, adjusting a little bit to find a good position, knowing that it isn't super important that our fingers are like right aligned with our shoulders. If we have a wider chest bust, like myself, or maybe some longer arms, we might want to angle out just a smidge. Same thing with our legs here. We maintain this position. We press up into our bridge, much like before. If we're practicing bridge, we can stop right here and we can hold this. If we're going to go into our wheel, we press as high as we possibly can, and then we throw some weight in the hands here. Then we lift up into our wheel. Maybe holding a little bit longer than we did the week before. Really challenging ourselves. Slowly coming down when we're ready. Releasing ourselves into the earth. Finding our peace. Maybe we made a little bit more progress than we did last week. If we made a little bit more progress, congratulations. maybe we just felt a little bit stronger and we can feel it coming on. Any progress is good progress. And if we didn't make strong progress as compared to previous weeks, that's okay. We're adjusting to the form of yoga and how something doesn't always progress week after week, and accepting that that's just the way it is. And we have to listen to our body and assess its needs to progress and to fulfill our own goals, and knowing that it just was not in the cards today, and accepting that and being comfortable with that. That being said, we're going to transition into our Shavasana, knowing that we can come down to a nice relaxed lying down position like so. Or for me, we can come up into a nice seated lotus position. Either is fine, whatever suits your fancy today. Now what's probably going to happen is the Instagram live feed is going to end before we reach our desired time and length for Shavasana. So about halfway through this closing here, I'm going to give my final remarks, and if you choose to hold Shavasana for 5 or 10 more minutes, go ahead and hold it and just try to process what I'm saying subconsciously, and we'll move on from there. Now, if we're lying down, we're finding a relaxing pace. Our breathing starts to slow down. We start to think about how our body's feeling. We might want to flex all the muscles we can, as hard as we can, and then just release them all at once to find our nice, relaxed position where we're truly at ease. If we're sitting in lotus, we got to be a little bit more engaged, sitting nice and tall, however, also relaxed. Our eyes may drift closed. Release that tension. Find our peace with that slowed breath. Wherever we are, hopefully we're starting to find our calmness. We reflect on this practice. We reflect on our day. We think about how maybe the way we pushed through this class, the tensions we felt might be related to the day we had, or the week we've had. Or maybe they're counter-related. There's not a specific meaning in one or the other. We're just trying to establish connections and be more aware of ourselves. Next week will be October. It's hard to think of. Using that thought to encourage the idea that there are some stressors that are simply out of our